Hi. So, the first book that I wanted to do a video journal on is called Real Americans. I know they say don't judge a book by its cover, but I 100% got this book because it was pretty. Um, I don't know if you can see it, but it's kind of got like gold foil around the words, and then it's got like the pretty patterns for each word. The author's name is Rachel Hong, which I think Hong means no in Vietnamese. So I wonder if she has Vietnamese roots. I don't know a whole lot about the Asian culture, just like random bits and pieces. But yeah, it's even printed on the edges. I read a lot further into this book than I'm going to talk about today because I haven't had the time to take notes on every single chapter and go back and reread. But usually, my method for picking books is if people are saying good things about it, I want to know what everyone's talking about, similar to TV shows. And then also, I just gonna go to Barnes and Nobles and I'll get a book based on if I think the author's cool or not. Um, I do believe that you can judge people by their face, especially if this is like their professional photo that they think portrays them really well. Like I feel like you took the time to decide what was going to be the picture you presented to the world. Um, but even though I picked this book by the cover, she does kind of fall into the category of someone I might be friends with. So 2 for 1. So I'm going to talk about the first 3 chapters of this book, even though I've read further. I haven't had time to like put down all the notes for everything. Like I could give a summary, but it wouldn't be as detailed as I would like it to be. So let's get into the first chapter. I took notes. It's like a little book report. Okay, so this isn't the first chapter, but it's like a little snippet of a story. It takes place in Beijing of 1966. There is a woman and her companion, and there's a seed locked up in a cabinet. And the story is that the seed was dropped by a dragon, and that the seed is supposed to grant the wish to whoever owns it. Um, the woman breaks the glass, and then she steals the seed, and then she's like the adrenaline rush. She's like, "Is this what love feels like?" And she wants to ask everybody she knows if this is how love feels for them, if it's like the excitement, if it's the rush. And at the time, she's like, "I know the story's fiction, but like stealing the seed and finally getting my wish come true is like I feel like I'm in love." And she's like, "Why can't it be her story?" So that's kind of how it ends. It's literally like 2 pages. I thought it was kind of cute. Um, I like the way TV shows and movies portray love because it's fun. I know it's not realistic, and I know it sets up unrealistic expectations for women and men and romantic people. But I feel like love can be a whirlwind sometimes. It can be fun, it can be joyful, but obviously in stories they don't tell you the whole thing. So that's the preface. Um, the next part, because the book's broken up into parts. Part one is called Lily. Lily is the main character of part one. It's chapters 1 through 16. But like I said previously, we're only going to do chapters 1 through 3. So it starts off in 1999. Lily lives a pretty mundane life. She's an intern at a photography magazine, and she wakes up, she snoozes her alarm, she interacts with her neighbor Lei Hao. Don't know how to pronounce it. Sorry about that. Lei Hao only speaks Cantonese, and Lily, though she is Chinese American, her parents didn't teach her any of her culture, any of her language, any of the food, just anything in general. They wanted her to be as Americanized as possible. So the story continues. She talks to Lei Hao. She only knows a little bit of Cantonese, or maybe Lei Hao is what she says. Oh, Lei Hao Ma, sorry. She talks to her neighbor and she says Lei Hao Ma, which is Cantonese, and it's the only Cantonese Lily knows because it's what her neighbor has taught her. And then she buys coffee and she goes to work because she's an intern and she brings coffee to people at work. Her boss, specifically, at her internship, she edits photos and she has an art history major. Her boss's name is Jerry. Jerry kind of sucks, as most bosses I assume in the 90s do, and most of them today, honestly. It kind of skips forward to a Christmas party where she meets her boss's nephew, and her boss introduces her as Korean, and then just kind of walks away. And Lily's like, "I'm Chinese," and the boss doesn't really say anything. He just gone. The nephew's like, "Hi, my name's Matthew," and he's like, "Does my uncle do that a lot? That's like really weird." And she's like, oh yeah, it's probably like the third time he's introduced me as a different type of Asian. And the nephew Matthew was like, you want me to talk to him about that? Because like that's weird, kind of rude. Um, and then Lily's like, no, it's fine. But she's not someone who like makes a fuss. But she does notice that Matthew is attractive, very attractive, and that he's white. I feel like you notice that. You just have eyes. You can tell what race people are. And he genuinely seems interested in getting to know her. Like he keeps talking to her throughout the rest of the night. And she's just like, what does this man want? And then there's a raffle, right? The raffle is to win a TV at her little Christmas holiday party at her job she doesn't get paid for. So she's just like, would love a TV. But you know who wins the raffle? The boss's nephew. Well, that's not rigged at all. And Matthew's like, do you want the TV? Because I don't need it. Like he tells Lily. And Lily's like, no one's ever given me a TV before. And then the chapter ends with Lily saying, do you want my number? Because I guess she can't really tell if he likes her or not, or if she wants to be friends, but she's interested in continuing their relationship, whatever it is, friendship, potential love interest, whatever that may be. I really liked the first chapter. I guess I could do my little synopsis at the end. We'll do it that way. Chapter 2. Lily wakes up the next day in the same dress. I guess she got drunk or tired. I'm going to assume drunk. But she gets a text from Matthew saying, do you want to go out to dinner with a stranger who gave you that TV last night? And she asks if he's paying because, you know, she's poor. She doesn't get paid to do her job. I honestly don't know how she's living in New York, how she's affording it. But yeah, so he says, of course. And then she's like, okay, I'll meet you there. And he was like, no, I'll send a driver. So she puts on her favorite black dress, something that she thinks will like meet the standards for Matthew. Because even though she doesn't know him that well, she could tell that he came for money, like the way he carries himself. And Matthew sends a driver named Mitchell. Mitchell will come up a few times throughout the story. Uh, Mitchell opens the door for her, and she's just like, this is weird. I can open my own door. But he's the driver, and like that's his job. And she's getting more and more in tune with like Matthew's money and where he comes from. Because who the fuck sends a driver? Like, this is your personal driver? And he drives her to the restaurant. And when they get to the restaurant, she rushes out. She's like, he's not going to get the door for me. But Mitchell, his name is Mitchell, Mitchell meets her quick enough to grab her hand and help her out. Because he's like, this is my job. Relax. So then she meets Matthew at the dinner, the cute white guy who invited her there, and Matthew learns that Lily can't speak Chinese, which we already kind of knew that, but Matthew didn't know that. She finds out Matthew's in finance, and Lily talks about how she hopes that her job opens up, that her magazine that she works for opens up with a job that she can work for and get paid. They find out they have a 5-year age gap. They were both born in Long Island. They talk about how they both love Paris and how they maybe they had crossed paths as babies in Long Island, which I think is kind of cute to think about if you're like on the romantic. Everything happens for a reason. Our paths have crossed multiple times until they actually touched, or whatever like that. And then randomly, they're like talking, getting to know each other, loving it, laughing. Matthew's like, "You want to go to Paris tonight?" And this is the first time that Lily like actively like notices in her head that he's rich. She has been taking note of the different things about him that are different from her, and I'm sure she's been putting together that he's rich, but she hasn't actively said it in her monologue in her brain yet. And she's like, he's rich. And then she doesn't question it. She goes to Paris with him. Red flag number one. Do not, I repeat, do not on first, second, third date leave the country with a man. This could be trafficking, but it works out well for her. They talk about all the types of shit on the plane and really laughing and get to know each other. And then as the plane starts to descend into Paris, Matthew freaks out, has a little bit of like a panic attack. And Lily's like, oh, I don't know what to do. We were just talking and laughing. And she's like, do you want quiet? Do you want me to keep talking? And he's like, no, keep talking. It helps calm me down. And then she holds his hand and like just kind of talks him off that little bridge or whatever, or off the cliff. That's the same. She talks him off the cliff, and he like calms down enough. And she's like, I don't know, like in her head, if this is platonic or romantic. But then when they land and he's like so grateful to her for like helping her get through her emotions, he kisses her. And she's like, oh, this is romantic. They have a great time in Paris. They share a bed. Lily's still just like, he kissed me, but this could still be a friendship. And he was just thankful that I helped him during the descent of the flight. No, they have sex. And she's like, oh, boyfriend. um, she gets swept up in her feelings, and Matthew also appears to get swept up in his feelings as well. You don't really get his point of view that much, just everything is from how she's seeing it. And that is how chapter 2 ends. Chapter 3 is after Paris. Lily's back in the flow of her job, and Matthew's back in the flow of his job. She knows he works finance, you know, finance, 6'5", blue eyes. I think he does have blue eyes, and I think he is tall. So he does kind of fit that TikTok sound. But he gets busy, but he calls her all the time. Every night, he calls to see how her day went, see how she's doing. Lily goes home to see her parents. This is where you find out that they're both geneticists. Don't know what that is. Um, you test genetics? I didn't look it up. I don't know what a geneticist is, but both her parents are geneticists. Her mom, that's her passion. Her dad, he just kind of doing it. He's chill. Mom, kind of hard to read, almost emotionless, only cares about her job. Questionable if she even cares about her daughter. Um, Matthew calls while she's visiting her parents, and she thinks about the fact that she didn't tell her parents about him. But she's like, no, that's weird. We're barely dating. Why would I bring all the kind of like humdrum into this relationship? Because I get that. You don't tell your parents about everybody you date unless it becomes something serious, because then they're going to be like, who is that? Are you a slut? Like, you're man after man after man, or woman after man after however you live your life. I get it, because I have friends like that. Like, they won't introduce a significant other to their parent unless it's like going towards the path of marriage. Because at that point, like, I'm not parading you in and out of my parents' life. I get it. So when Lily gets back in town, she goes to Matthew's, and finds out that he lives in this huge penthouse. It's barely decorated except for like the front door. It's got like an orchid and some books, and just kind of like it looks pretty and it's staged. And she's like, who did this? Who decorated this? This is the only part of your house that's decorated. She meets her house. She meets his housekeeper. Her name is Jenny. She's Chinese. The first time they meet, Jenny starts speaking Chinese to her. I don't remember which dialect they said, but it's some variation of Chinese. And she's like, "What?" And then Jenny's like, "Oh, sorry." And then she just kind of scurries off because she's like, "Oh, that was awkward." Um, Matthew tells Lily that there's no one like her. Like, you're starting to see that he's kind of a little bit obsessed with her. Like, she's one of a kind. He's interested in keeping the relationship going, or he's just a really smooth talker. We'll never know. Honestly, you never know what relationships. If you want to live in the happy dappy romantic world where you're just like, oh, for sure, everything he's saying is true and he's not manipulative, but they could be manipulative, and you honestly never know. But back to the story. Matthew takes Lily to a New Year's Eve party, and Lily is just like, this is not my class of people. She wears this dress that she thinks is really cute, but as she gets there, she's like, maybe it looks kind of ratty in comparison to what everyone else has on. She starts to compare herself to other Asian women at the party because they're hanging off the arms of like white men and black men. And she's just like, is that what we do? Is that like our stereotype? Like, she's always kind of like trying to determine her perspective of the world. Um, okay, Lily, main character, meets White Lily. White Lily owns the apartment that the New Year's Eve party's in, and everything in that apartment is expensive. White Lily is married to a man that is friends with Matthew, and you can tell that they're very much about like showing that we have money. Okay, so everything in the house is super expensive. Main character Lily tries to talk to White Lily, but White Lily doesn't seem super interested after kind of like sizing her up and down and deciding that maybe she's just going to be there for a short amount of time. It's like not worth getting to know you, essentially. Like, you ever meet someone where you know they don't want anything to do with you, but they're just doing like small, nice, peaceful talk and will dip as soon as they get the chance. Those are the vibes that White Lily's giving off. And then eventually that is over. The awkwardness of that is over, and Lily meets Stan, an artist, and he says she looks out of place here, which kind of brings up all these insecurities for her. She's like, I already feel out of place. Why do I look out of place? And he's like, you're paying attention. It looks like you're paying attention to what's going on, which obviously we've seen throughout the chapter. She's looking around and like describing what everything's happening and trying to understand like the socio emotional connections between the people, how they know each other, if they seem to like each other, how the relationships are looking. Like she's trying to figure out so she can best insert herself in the situation that she knows she doesn't belong. So now he's like, you don't belong. And she's like, fuck. But then there's a time skip, and Matthew goes to Berlin. He comes back to visit her apartment with gifts. And before he came, she thoroughly cleaned the apartment. She's like, this apartment isn't as nice as his. Like, I'm living in the slums in comparison to him. There's stains. Nothing's as nice as the stuff that he owns. She cleans. She cooks. She tries to make a salad like the one they had in Paris. And she's like, there's a stain on the couch that I can't get out. Like, she feels inadequate about her apartment in comparison to him, which kind of brings up the thoughts of inadequacy that she feels as a person in comparison to him. I see the illusions. The writer can't get this past me. So she burns a CD to play in the background when he comes, like all the songs that she thinks he'll like. And then she plays it for him. They eat dinner. I actually don't remember if they eat dinner. But she gets overwhelmed with him being in her apartment. Like when he shows up after she's cleaned and made dinner and all these things, it's just like, I just want to spend the night alone. And she kicks him out. And that's the end of chapter 3. My thoughts on chapter 3, or the last 3 chapters, is that I didn't, one of my phone's dying. I didn't necessarily understand where the story was going because the title of the book was called Real Americans. I thought it was going to talk about um, the different types of Americans, like in a more realistic point of view instead of fictional. I know nothing about this book when I got it, so that was mistake number 1. But I am enjoying it so far. I do enjoy fiction. That's kind of like my wheelhouse. That's kind of where I stay. And the fact that it kind of turned into a love story, but it doesn't seem to be as lovey-dovey as most love stories are, I'm enjoying, because she's still trying to figure out who she is as a person. Like she definitely, you can tell she feels lost because she lacks the cultural background that a lot of people have, and she doesn't have a job that she's filled by. She doesn't appear to have really any friends, and now she's got this love interest that she doesn't feel like she measures up to. So far, I'm really interested in finishing the book. Um, and those are my thoughts so that I can come back to this later. If anybody else finds this video and they want to tell me their thoughts, they can. So far, super interested in finishing it off. I'll be back in a week with a few more chapters. Bye.